Yeah.
So I'll call the meeting to order. This is the Technology Committee. And so we have on our agenda first, item number 1, adopt resolution recognizing funds. And this deals with the Carl Moyer program and the SWIM program. Our presenter is Vicki White.
Thank you. Good afternoon. With this item, this is essentially the start of our annual Moyer cycle. And with this item, staff is seeking board approval to adopt a resolution to recognize the funds and accept the terms and conditions for the fiscal year 18-19 Carl Moyer Program Award, issue the program announcements, as well as transfer some funds. For year 21, the total Carl Moyer program funding is approximately $30.47 million, of which 6.25% is identified for administrative costs. The rest of it is project funds. We do have a local match requirement, which we rely on our AB 923 funds for, and that amount is about 15% or $4.57 million. The proposed project funding for these program announcements are about $29 million for the Carl Moyer program solicitation. And in addition to that, we plan to allocate about $4 million for the surplus optional opt-in NOx program, which is a program that targets emission reductions from off-road equipment. In addition to that, any unused Moyer funds from previous funding cycles, accrued interest, or any additional AB 923 funds that we have will be used to fund projects in this funding cycle. Additional funds may become available at the time of awards, which will be scheduled for October. And at the time we bring the awards to the board, we will have a detailed assignment of the funding sources, including interest, Carl Moyer funds, as well as our 923 funds.
Are there any unused funds?
Yes.
Sometimes the projects fall through, and so some awards aren't able to be made. In some cases, A or B will provide for other district funds to us. So there's some.
Sometimes, okay.
Yeah, unused, or another word for that would be fall-through funds, projects that have fallen through, and those funds have been reallocated back to our program for future projects. As you may already know, the Carl Moyer program funds a variety of categories, including on-road vehicles and equipment, as well as off-road sources. In addition to that, it includes marine vessels. And we also now have opened up our Carl Moyer program to include infrastructure projects. And last year we funded about $13.6 million in infrastructure projects. We're looking forward to see the demand for this year's Moyer program. And we define infrastructure under Moyer to be infrastructure that's needed to support zero and near zero emission heavy duty vehicles and equipment. We are not funding light-duty vehicle charging stations under this program. It's strictly focused on supporting the heavy-duty vehicles and equipment. And we consider a lot of factors for these projects. We look at whether or not they're located in disadvantaged or low-income communities, whether or not they provide public access. We do try to prioritize the infrastructure for electric vehicles, heavy-duty trucks, and other equipment. And we want to make sure that the applicant has essentially authority to operate that infrastructure for the life of the project. Sometimes we find applicants coming in with a very short lease of the property, and that may not be very suitable. So we look at that factor as well. The schedule, we hope to release the program announcements on March 1st with board approval, and we give about 90 days for the application period. We're going to close on June 4th, and then we plan to do the evaluations and bring the awards to the board in October. And we will be using the current Carl Moyer program guidelines, which were adopted by CAR back in April 2017. And with this item, we also need to transfer funds to our existing voucher incentive program. The VIP program targets truck replacements for small fleets. And we're currently expending all the funds we have allocated to that program, so we just need to transfer additional funds. We're looking at another $3 million to be added to continue this program. So overall, the recommended actions are to adopt a resolution to recognize up to $31 million from CARB into the Carl Moyer Program Fund, SB 1107 Fund, and authorize the executive officer to accept the terms and conditions of the grant agreement. Issue the 2 program announcements, one for the Carl Moyer Program and one for the SOOM provision, as well as transfer $3 million from the Carl Moyer Program AB 923 Fund to the Voucher Incentive Program. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor.
I have a couple questions. One is how do the owners of these small fleets get the details about applying for these funds?
The $3 million.
Yeah, we have 2 programs. Under the Carl Moyer, we will be implementing workshops in our essentially 4-county area. We will send out, we do quite an extensive outreach to past contractors. We do have a small fleet list, so we'll be sending them information by email and by mail. We have a Carl Moyer program brochure. We have staff contacts that they can call to get more information. Under our voucher incentive program, the VIP program, which specifically is set up for small fleets, we have contracts under that program with dealerships, and we have, I think, over 20 dealerships that are participating. The small fleets can contact any one of those dealers, and they will help them fill out the application to apply for the funds.
And then what's the timeline for if they've been approved to replace these older diesel trucks after they've been awarded the grant funds?
Yeah, we give them within 18 months. So if we do end up executing a contract with them, they will have 18 months from the time they execute the contract to deploy the vehicle.
So so I'm proposing as a Metro Board of Director that any new lane that if we ever build a new lane on the 710 freeway, that it be designated for zero emission cars and trucks, particularly coming from the port. And the idea was to embed this new technology that's embedded in the roadway so that electric vehicles just recharge for the whole 19 miles as opposed to worrying about plugging in somewhere. Would that kind of a program be eligible for the Carl Moyer funds?
For infrastructure.
And I guess Metro would be the applicant?
Yeah,
Or Caltrans, whoever builds it?
Yeah, they're welcome to apply, and the zero emission trucks are not yet commercially available, so that would be the first hurdle. They would have to make sure CARB has either approved or certified that technology first. That's a basic requirement of Moyer, but once that happens, they can go ahead and apply for the funding, yes.
But there currently is no dynamic charging EVSE yet.
Right.
Right, so they're working on it, but as Vicki said, the trucks don't exist yet, nor does the dynamic charging exist. It's purely in a research phase.
Matt,
Details, where's your vision?
Matt, could you also go into the aspects associated with the road and the inductive charging and the operational maintenance costs associated with that?
But, well, yeah, there are, as we found in our lessons learned for our catenary project, there's a lot of challenges that have to be overcome in terms of the ownership, maintenance, operation, how you actually attribute a fee for the electricity for the vehicles, and so those are, as you mentioned, Supervisor, those are details that would need to be
Right. I think it's a technology. This technology does exist, and I think that's, I know, another discussion on another day, but I think that's what we ought to be investing in, not just on the 710, but up and down the roads of California, because we're never going to have enough charging stations for cars and trucks, and the better battery that we're still waiting to be invented, I'm not sure ever comes along. Why not take that all off the table and just allow the recharging to happen as you drive? Makes complete sense. Don't refute anything I just said. Okay. That's all I wanted to say.
So I want to recognize our council member, Buscaino, has joined us. He's the chair. I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe. We just wanted to get started. So we're on the item 1 and just at public, at discussion on item 1. So please take over for me.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, and apologies for my delay. I just got done with LA City Council here. So any other members like to speak on item 1 that's before us?
I just have a real quick question, Mr. Chair. This is regarding the buses, and I know that we're looking at both zero and near zero. During public comment at our last tech committee meeting, something was brought up about propane. Is there some language in here that kind of will preclude us from having to run into a situation like that again, where maybe some of the numbers are changing as far as NOx emissions?
Not under Moyer, because Moyer is set up, it's based on the technology they select in the application, so that determines the funding award.
But it's not, it doesn't allow for 0.2, right?
Correct.
I'm not suggesting that we somehow try to include propane. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't have the same problem again.
Right.
So it's precluded under Moyer, right? So the 0.2 is precluded.
That's
Okay.
my understanding, yeah.
All right.
It's
So-
only an option for the small fleets under the VIP program.
But we could also have been a little bit more careful on the 0.2 reference.
In the school bus
In the
announcement
school bus
3 years ago,
announcement.
yes, we could have been more.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to make sure we're
Right.
looking forward on some of those things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Members, any other questions or comments? Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. Chairman, I need to state that I don't have a financial interest in this issue, in this agenda item, but I'm required to state for the record that I'm a board member of the California Air Resources Board, and their funds are involved in the agenda item, so I just need to state that. I do have a question, though, also about when we are evaluating these applications. So June 4 is the deadline to get in their application, and October, the decision comes out. So do we have criteria that we use to evaluate each of the applications? And maybe you can
Ad
give me a
nauseam.
quick rundown of what that
It's
is?
very prescribed, formulaic in the way they evaluate it. Vicky could speak to that.
Yeah, it's, they have to meet kind of some basic eligibility criteria, and then once they make that, they gotta be in compliance with fleet rules, these have to be surplus reductions. And then, once they kind of meet an eligibility list, the primary thing is we rank based on cost effectiveness.
Okay, cost effectiveness.
Cost effectiveness is what ultimately decides, if they're oversubscribed, we just fund in order of cost effectiveness until the funding runs out.
I see, okay, because that would be a very important factor, I think, that cost effectiveness
Oh, absolutely.
one would.
And as Executive Director Nastri just reminded me, we put in our contracts also that they can't, it's already stated in our T's and C's, terms and conditions, but they can't be in violation of any labor
rules, yes.
violations.
Yeah. And under this program, the applicant is required, if he's replacing that vehicle, to scrap the old vehicle.
That's correct.
We can't just send it up
That's where
to
we
the state
get-
of Washington or somewhere else. It has to be scrapped.
Well,
In our current
Replacement, or-
program, scrapping is
we're
the
looking to change.
primary choice, but we are looking at, there have been cases, we're trying to see a case-by-case approval where you could do a trade-down. So a fleet could purchase, or if they're getting rid of the 2010 vehicle, for example, they can give that to the small fleet. The small fleet can then use their 2008 or 2007 older vehicle, and that can be scrapped. So that way you do.
So you
and then-
can do kind of a relay.
A trade
We're
down.
we're exploring that to see if we can do that on a more normalized basis. Right now, it's have to be a case-by-case approved by ARB.
Because the port is, all those vehicles have to be 2010 or newer, right? So
Yes, was it
the
2007?
the
2023.
Clean Ports Plan,
By
right?
2023.
I think there's still some 08s out there, but you can't register a new old truck, right? So I think if you were to register in the port now, it's like 2014, I think,
Mhm.
under some recent Cap 3 changes. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'll move the staff recommendation.
I'll
here
second.
To adopt the resolution.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, we have a question. Supervisor Perez, the floor is yours.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I read your approach when it comes to the outreach efforts, but I'm wondering, what does the outreach look like out in the Coachella Valley? I noticed that the outreach here with regards to publications or advertising, public notice, you have the LA Times, the Orange County Register, San Bernardino Sun, and Riverside County Press Enterprise. But folks out in the Coachella Valley don't usually read those newspapers. And I'm just wondering if there's a different strategy for the Coachella Valley, one. And secondly, was wondering if you can enlighten me a little bit as to folks from out in this area, if there actually have been applications, maybe specifically like Sunline. So if you could just kind of give me some background on both those fronts, if you could. Thank you.
Just the outreach.
Yeah, with regard to the outreach in Coachella Valley, every year we, and I think people in the Coachella Valley region expect it, and we're happy to go. We do have one of our workshops set up. It's going to be held at the Coachella Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District. So that'll be on April 17th. We actually send out notices to all the folks that have been participating in Moyer over the past 20 years, so they'll be notified. We do work with the various agency, what am I thinking of, the ag associations that are out there. We have contacts at those, and we try and outreach to them to get the notice out.
And you also participate on some of the EJ outreach efforts and the 617 outreach efforts, where you've presented at these meetings and talked about the opportunities that the Carl Moyer program provides. So we do it as part of the 617 outreach as well.
Okay.
And
And what's the response like?
Actually, last year's meeting in Coachella, we're hoping for a similar turnout. It was well attended. It was about 40 to 50 people, so that's pretty good for our Carl Moyer program workshops. There are some consultants that are also doing outreach on their own behalf to outreach. We're going to do a special outreach to farmers in these areas because we have some additional funding through the farmer funding program that ARB started last year. So yeah, it's pretty well attended when we go out there.
I appreciate that. I'd like to work closely with you on those efforts with staff that I have on my county staff, as well as my consultant with Guillermo. That way we assist you in any of those efforts moving forward, just so that we get at the word as much as possible. Has Sunline applied in the past? Have they received funds?
yes, so we've actually worked very closely with someone when they installed their original hydrogen fueling station for their fuel cell buses. They have I think they have an application into ARB for an update, and so we wrote a letter of support, and we're going to be considering cost sharing their upgrade of that station. So yeah, we work very closely with Sunline.
All right, good to know. For purposes of transparency, not that I have any financial gain, just like to let people know that I sit on that board as well.
That's noted. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anyone in public like to address this item? Item number 1. Any member of the public like to speak on item number 1? Come forward now.
None in Diamond Bar.
Thank you. Okay, no one here in Los Angeles or City Hall. Okay, we have a motion and a second. A roll call vote, please. Item 1.
Supervisor Hahn,
Aye.
Mayor McCallum, Mayor Pro Tem McCallum is absent. Mayor Mitchell,
Aye.
Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Motion passes 5 ayes.
Thank you. Let's now move, colleagues, to item number 2. Item number 2 is now before us.
Good afternoon. I'm here to discuss item number 2. This is to recognize funds and execute amend agreements for installation of air filtration systems in schools. So EPA has executed a SEP with Veolia ES Technical Solutions located in Azusa. The intent of this step would be to install air filtration systems in up to 2 schools. IQ Air has, through multiple competitive bid processes, installed air filtration at 88 schools. So IQ Air would work with Azusa Unified School District. We've looked at 2 possible schools near the Veolia facility for them to receive air filtration. It could be for a period of either 5 or 10 years, depending on the costs. In addition to the usual panel filtration technology and standalone units for ultrafine PM, we'd also be doing gas phase filtration because this facility has some kind of odor, VOC issues, and so the activated carbon filtration cartridges would help address that. So the schedule is pretty aggressive. So assuming that board approval is obtained in March, the idea would be to execute any necessary contracts and perform any site assessments in March, and to complete this project by April and provide a final report. So the recommended actions are to recognize the funds from the Veolia Solutions into the Air Filtration Fund, execute the necessary agreements with the school district and IQ Air to install the air filtration systems, and have the ability to amend the contract to use any unspent administrative funds towards additional filters, as well as to reimburse the general fund to implement the project. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? Item number 2. Okay, hearing none, like questions?
No, I was going to move approval.
Okay, we got a motion. Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you so much. A roll call vote.
Supervisor Hahn,
Aye.
Mayor Mitchell,
Aye.
Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye, but I failed to call for public comment, so my fault. Any members of the public wish to speak on item number 2, please come forward.
None here.
Looks like we will pass this item number 2 unanimous and send that to full board. Thank you. Item number 3.
Good afternoon, Chair Buscaino and the Technology Committee members. Naveen Berry, I'll give a brief overview of our 2000 annual report and plan update. I know a lot of committee members have heard a lot of this before, but I wanted to give you a brief history and overview. The program was created about 30 years ago and places very specific requirements on the program, the staff, all the way down to the advisory group makeup, as well as some reporting requirements to the legislator. One of the items I did want to mention is over the last 30 years, the Technology Advancement Staff has leveraged about $320 million in Clean Fuels Fund into about $1.5 billion worth of projects. It's a pretty formal year-long process where we actually have 2 advisory committee meetings, and we receive input for the program direction and project areas, and we hold one in the fall and the other one in the winter typically, or late summer and winter. And in fact, recently we've invited both Ports of LA and Ports of Long Beach representatives to sit on our technology advisory group as well, and they've accepted, and I'll get into that in a little bit detail as well. We've also incorporated feedback from the technology committee, other experts. We do presentations at conferences. We maintain relationships with OEMs to get feedback on how we should be devising this plan. This chart basically just summarizes kind of an overlay of how the Clean Fuels program is set up. And typically speaking, the projects that we fund are in the orange box, somewhere in TRL 3, which is the Department of Energy designation for technology readiness, somewhere between 3 and 8. And most of the projects that we focus on fall under that. This chart, I expanded a little bit this year because as that technology is commercialized, that can then be used for the incentive funds, such as what Carl Moyer or many other programs that we had that Vicki described. And then earlier today, and as the board is well aware, our air quality management plan has many provisions that tie into incentive funds and indirect source measure requirements and such, and even fleet rules where they can take advantage of these. So really this program fits in really well from the broader SCAQMD perspective of incentive and rule development. This chart basically highlights some of the 4 core technologies in hydrogen fuel cells heavy duty, especially electric and hybrid technologies, engine systems, and some of the supporting infrastructure are the major categories. But we have 5 additional ones that also are part of this program, and they're very valuable in terms of doing some emission studies, some work that can also transfer into stationary uses and other emission control technologies and such. We continue to leverage and partner up with state agencies and local entities. Certainly, California Air Resources Board and the California Climate Investments has been a big part of that. This chart basically shows that we had $54.5 million in grants from these various entities. And out of that, the Volvo electric truck project that received about $44 million is certainly notable. This chart basically summarizes projects that were completed in 2018. And one of the things I wanted to point out is we managed to leverage about $72 million of outside funds in 2018 projects. And the main one is the electric hybrid, and that looks like a big part of the pie, and really is the Daimler project that was approved that we funded close to $9 million from the Clean Fuels Fund last year. We continue to have multiple concurrent projects. Just as of January 1st, we had 106 open contracts. So the group does a great job in balancing a lot of different work in a lot of different areas. Just some highlights from our 2018. I mentioned the Daimler project. We're working with some CEC funds on zero emission top handlers. We continue to work with other entities and grants on plug-in hybrid Class 8 trucks, on heavy-duty post-piston or advanced liquid fuel engine projects, just to name a few, but I can certainly get into details if the committee has any questions. Again, some of the highlight projects, we continue to work with CEC and coordinate with ARB and others on the network for hydrogen fueling stations. LAX is the most recent completed station in Southern California area. Proud to say we have 20 of the 39 that are operational in California within our basin. Another key project that you all heard about is the 12-liter CNG engine that was certified. And now we're actually rolling those out with incentive funds, and quite excited to see how that is a center point for our near-term emission reduction goals, especially with heavy-duty trucks. Another accomplishment is the hybrid electric Class 8 trucks that we worked on, and battery electric trucks with some DOE funds. And now we're seeing those first stage prototypes resulting in the second stage and near pre-commercial prototypes. So quite exciting how these projects over time tie into this kind of commercial success. This chart is just the allocation from our 2019 plan update. I provided a very similar chart to this last October, I believe, as well, and got additional feedback from our advisory group. And this presentation will kind of just summarize that we're just fine-tuning the funding allocations that were in the 2018 board approved plan, and really just slightly increasing for hydrogen and fuel cells, slightly increasing for the electric and hybrid technologies, and a slight dip in the engine systems because we've gotten some liquid and heavy-duty natural gas projects up and going, and then some additional funds are also for deploying the infrastructure, both for hydrogen, for EVSE, as well as for natural gas and other types of infrastructure. There's smaller amounts of funding allocated for the other areas, but clearly health impact studies and emission studies continue to be a large focus of this effort as well. This chart just basically lays out a schedule. I updated the technology committee back in October, and with the committee's approval, we'll take this package to the full governing board for their approval in March, and plan to submit the report to the legislator by the end of March. As I indicated, the Health and Safety Code also outlines the Technology Advancement Advisory Committee. We also have the Clean Fuels Advisory Committee. The makeup is quite diverse, made up of various experts. I just kind of listed out some of the newer members that are coming on board, especially in the Technology Advancement Advisory Group, where we need the Technology Committee's approval to move to incorporate them. And this is Dr. Steve Cliff from ARB, for Jodine Geis from LADWP. The previous member has retired. Chris Cannon and Heather Tomley from the two ports that you guys know well. Yuri Friedman from SoCal Gas, and Phil Herrigs is from Chevron, or represents WISPA interest. And then on the Clean Fuel Advisory Group, we have Dr. Mark Duvall from EPRI and Dr. John Boudreau from the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment, participating and giving us feedback as well. So with that, the recommendation from staff is to approve both the 2018 annual report and the plan update, and approve the resolution that basically indicates that there are no duplicate projects or funding that we're using as a part of this effort, and then also approve the advisory membership changes and direct us to provide the report to the board and subsequently to the legislature. And with that, I can answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Naveen. Colleagues, members, any questions, comment?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Robinson, floor is yours.
So with you mentioned these are new advisory group members. In the existing group itself, so is there anyone from Edison or any of the other public
Yes.
utility?
So both utilities, Yuri is replacing
Okay.
Dr. Jeff Reed, and from Edison, we have Don Wilson
Okay.
that sits on the committee, or the advisory board as well.
Great. Are any of the other public utility agencies, like for instance Anaheim? I know we have LADWP in their large service area, and clearly Edison has a large portion of the district as well.
Yeah, in the advisory group itself, they're not part of it,
Okay.
but the invitation goes out to a broad range of folks
Okay.
to participate in the
But if you have a
process.
recommendation from any of the nominees, we'd be happy to send them in the money.
Great. Okay. Thanks a lot for that. And then, not to open up the same can of worms that we started with in our first item, but it seems like a lot of the concern that I'm hearing on the electrification side is on the infrastructure part to it. So I think that we're making great strides in battery technology, both in the heavy duty sector as well as the light duty. And but infrastructure continues to be one of those gigantic challenges. So I don't know what opportunities there are. It's not something clearly we need to be talking about today, but maybe in October when we're looking at the 2020 plan, there might be some opportunities to kind of try to reach out to research institutions, universities, things like that. I know that one of the projects I think we had was with UC San Diego and solar to power. So
it's a great point, and we keep bringing this up to ARBs and others, is that we see that as a big challenge because there's a long lead time required. But what probably wasn't highlighted sufficiently in our Daimler and our Volvo large projects, they are looking at infrastructure in terms of putting battery storage, solar power, coupling it with fast charging, so they can see how they operationally might work that into a daily routine. So they'll hopefully come up with some good lessons in terms of operational feasibility and how do you stage the charging. So that'll give us.
Which is why the embedded technology is. You opened it up, which is, it's going to be the technology that is going to be the most efficient, in my opinion.
Right.
And I'm just not wedded to one. I just think so that's one
So that's
option.
a great-
Clearly, I know that we've looked at catenary. I know that we're looking at
The national labs are looking at the dynamic charging aspect as well as some of the other. There's just a release recently that DOE is going to fund the battery research at Argonne. So those are things that we can keep our eye on and make sure that we're incorporating that into our plan.
I know, like one is a potential just battery swap out, right?
Right.
Which how efficiently could that be done? Where so that's another thought. But again, I'm not wedded to one. I just want to make sure that we continue to focus on the infrastructure
Absolutely.
side. So.
Good suggestions.
And Matt, isn't Israel doing some of that right now, the battery swap out?
They did that originally they were planning to do that with the Leafs, but that technology didn't pan out in that case. But we know that's possible with Teslas, and we think the Tesla truck is probably going to do something similar. So we'll keep our eye on that.
It works for my Walkman, so.
So it has to work for trucks.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just
Yeah.
have one question of our staff. Can you confirm for us that the programs we're doing here in the Clean Fuels Fund does not duplicate any past or present programs or projects funded by other organizations that may be working on things like this?
To the best of our knowledge, we are in the lead, taking a leadership position on a lot of these different technologies. And the reason our staff goes to conferences and they network with experts is to ensure that we don't have duplication. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I had a question, Naveen, maybe you can answer. What systems or softwares do you have in place to avoid duplication of projects?
So we track pretty closely all of our different projects and use various different techniques, but really is the staff understanding and going back and looking at our historical documentation, all the reports and all the projects that we've done, and we review those. And we have a pretty strong vetting process as these proposals come into us to make sure that if there's something that we've been involved with in the past or other entities are involved with, we'll make contacts with ARB, with California Energy Commission, with Department of Energy, make sure that there's not that duplication, but we track it and we look at our historical documentation as well.
But we don't have
Is
a
that
program available.
We
That does
track,
that.
we have a database that tracks some of the projects that have been completed, but as far as a national or international effort goes.
Yeah, I don't think that's what the chairman's asking. I think I'll defer to the chairman in terms of the software that he was thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, are you got electronic files, or are we going like using a tickler file? I'm just trying to know how archaic it is.
No, we have, all of our projects are electronically tracked through our database as well as through our financial system. But to ensure that there's no duplication, it's essentially the creation of our annual report every year. So we have a record every year of the projects that we undertake. And a lot of it's institutional knowledge, right? So there's rarely a time when we get a project that isn't somehow advancing an aspect of the technology. And if it is something that's being duplicative, we wouldn't bring it to the committee.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Any member of the public wish to speak on item 3 that's before us, please come forward.
No one here.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 3.
I'll move the item.
Second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Hahn,
Aye.
Mayor Mitchell,
Aye.
Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Motion passes 5 ayes.
Okay, thank you. So item 3 is approved. Moving forward to the agenda, any other business? General public comment, members of the public wish to speak. Oh, Ms. Mitchell, yes.
We have one public comment here at CC8. It's from John Lundhair.
John, please come forward. Welcome.
He's from A to Z Bus Sales in Colton. Good morning.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess.
Give you John.
Yes, sir.
You may begin, I think.
Three
Oh, okay.
minutes, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you, South Coast board members and staff and committee members. My name is John Lander. I'm the CEO and president of A to Z Bus Sales. And I want to start by just saying thank you to this committee and to South Coast for the lower school bus emission program. Through your efforts and your leadership, over 1,700 school buses have been replaced. Dirty diesel pre-1994 school buses have been replaced through this program. So I thank you for your leadership there. We're proud of our partnership in helping you with those goals as well. For the last 18 years, we've supported South Coast by supplying new technology to reach the attainment goals of South Coast Air Quality Management District. We have a 34-year history here in California, and for the last 28 years, we've been supplying alternative fuel school buses to California school districts to help clean the air. In fact, we represent Bluebird, which is almost a 100-year-old school bus manufacturer, and they are the undisputed leader of alternative fuel school buses. In fact, they've supplied 6 times more than all our competitors combined of alternative fuel school buses. So this is really our wheelhouse, and we're very proud of it and proud of supporting this district. We currently offer a 0.02 NOx Type D CNG. We've also offer the 0.02 NOx Type C propane, as well as a 0.05 NOx propane. And then we also will soon have CARB certification on a Type C CNG engine as well. In addition to that, we have a full complement of all-electric zero-emission vehicles that we supply. In fact, we supplied 7 of them in the most recent South Coast program. We have a Type D, we have a Type C, and we actually have 2 different Type A's that we supply to school districts. Our job is to earn business, not to have business forced on anybody. So the fact is, school districts have a choice when they select school buses. Your program is set up to incentivize new technology, and so this program, actually, to Councilmember Robinson's point, on the program announcement in 2017, it stated clearly 0.2 is the minimum NOx requirement, but that lower NOx emission school buses would be prioritized. And so that's what we've done. We've come up with new technology through our own funding, investing millions of dollars to bring this technology to the South Coast Area District, and we're very proud of that. I want to also mention safety is a #1 priority for Bluebird. In fact, the Bluebird school buses meet different standards than our competitors do. And we actually were the first to market with the electronic stability control 4 years ago. We offer that standard now, as well as a backup camera. So safety is very important. And also we passed the Altoona rigorous test for transit authorities to buy the Bluebird school bus propane as well.
John, you need to wrap up.
Okay, so thank you. So just real quickly, the propane system that we use is 15 times more of those on the road today. About 500 million miles of data to support that program, and it's the 4th generation. So we'd like to support the current program as is. We will do whatever the South Coast wants us to do. We can offer different CNG models, electric, whatever the choice is made, we're here to support, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that want to make any public comment this morning? There's no one else here.
How about our sites? Any other members of the public like to speak on a non-agenda item? Please come forward. No one here in Los Angeles?
No one here at the county.
Not over here.
Okay, so with that, we are adjourned. Hope you had a nice Valentine's Day. If you're single or married, just to let you know I still love you.
We have Valentine's Day, Joe. Come on. This was a good meeting. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Joe. I feel special.
Mayor, can I go over an issue with you real quick?
Yeah, sure.